Welcome to Failing Forward. This show is all about the other side of success. We talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators who aren't afraid to share the mistakes they've made. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. Every setback is just a setup for something bigger, if you're willing to learn from it. And we're back for another episode of the Failing Forward podcast. Joined here today by my co-host, Uncle Baby Billy, Will Rauber. And today we've got two guests. We did a little 2-on-2 interview segment today. Really excited to have two good friends that are doing some amazing things in this community, Miss Heather Fronk and Miss Candace Turpack.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having us.
All right. So let's get into this a little bit. I'm going to start, Heather, with you. We met many years ago when you were working in the banking industry. And I know you and your husband have an entrepreneurial journey, and you guys have started businesses and have found various different levels of success in a lot of different things that you're doing. And a few years ago, you started this nonprofit, Clothed in Strength. And it was something that immediately jumped out to me as something that just kind of hit home for me. I was raised in a circumstance where I had an abusive father who was an alcoholic, and I had a lot of family members that kind of like jumped in to save us and to try to help and get us out of that environment. And I know that, we went through a variety of things early on. One person that is really impactful in our story is Judge Beth Miller. She actually helped my mother finalize the divorce while she was in the hospital. And while she was dealing with cancer that ultimately ended up taking her life. But I now only know the stories of what my mother went through in trying to escape that situation, both for her and for her kids, from the stories that other people have told me. Right? I was young. I was only 4 years old when this was going on. So there's not a whole lot of real memories that are there, but I do know how unbelievably difficult that is to get out of that situation and get into another situation and start over and start fresh and escape from all of that. So one of the things I wanted to ask about as we get started is, what was the thing that really kind of birthed this nonprofit? What was the need in our community? What was the experience? What was the thing that made you realize this is something that you need to do?
So I've always had a heart for the community. I love serving people. I've sat on lots of boards, and while all of those have fulfilled me in different ways, when I left the bank in 2019 and I took things off of my plate, removed myself from boards, and really had time to reflect on what's the trajectory of my life looking like. And at this phase where I stepped away from my career, I came alongside my husband with our businesses. Something that really just kind of, after all of the years, came back to me was walking through being a young single mom. I got pregnant in my second year of college. And it didn't start out as abusive, but eventually there was domestic violence involved. And when she was 3, I left with anything that I could fit in my car and with her. And I was up here. I'm from South Carolina, so I was up here all by myself. And I was determined to finish school. What I did know is that God gave me a great gift of self-drive, and I was not going to be a statistic. And so I stayed up in Ohio with no family. And at that time, you would think I was working full-time at the bank, I was going to school full-time at Youngstown State, you would think that there would be resources for mothers who are just trying. And what I found was that there wasn't, at least not for me. And I never received government assistance as far as, financial help for housing or for groceries or anything. And so fast forward all of these years later, and I don't know exactly why. I think Steve and I were on our 10-year wedding anniversary, and we started talking about, at this point in our life, how can we give back? And the topic, he was also raised by a single mother for a short period of time, and how could we help this population in some way, And so that was kind of the birth of Clothed in Strength, was this conversation with him. And really what it ended up turning into is what it is today. But really what did 22-year-old Heather need, and what resources could have helped her, what could have lightened the load and the burden just a little bit more. And so that was kind of the start of Clothed in Strength and kind of putting pen to paper with that.
And so you've had some pretty substantial milestones early on in Clothed in Strength. You've gotten a lot of people that have heard the story and have realized that this is something that they need to support and they need to get behind from a lot of different areas and support structures. Tell us where Clothed in Strength is today. I mean, what are you guys doing? What are those specific programs that you have available to people? Where are you? I know that there is a new exciting building. It's not as new at this point in time, but it's a pretty big milestone for you guys to cross.
So we're only just now entering our third year. So we have grown really, really fast. And to your point of your story that you shared, I think the coolest thing that's come out of this, and a big reason we've grown as fast as we have, is because of those stories. I mean, I knew you for how many years before I ever, thought of Clothed in Strength, and we never, right, had these conversations. And that's what I found, is that there are so many people in my life that I had met, that I had not yet met, that a common denominator was they were either raised by a single mother, they'd walked through, being a single mother, or they had a close family member or a friend who had, and so it's resonated with so many different people. You throw a domestic violence piece in there, there's a huge correlation between young single mothers and domestic violence, like in the 80-some percentile. And so there's a connectivity there that regardless of where you sit on your views, you can come together and agree that there should be more help for these mothers. And the neatest thing has been that a lot of these organizations, I spend a lot of my time in partner agency meetings and looking for new opportunities to reach more and more single women. A lot of them were around when I was a young single mother. But when you're in flight or fight mode, or you don't qualify for government assistance and they're not leading you towards other resources, that's been like the breakthrough moment of everything. And I think why we've grown so fast, because so many people have gotten behind us, which we've been so thankful for. Steve and I were like, my husband and I were like, we don't want this to be our mission. I want the community to believe in it. So starting in one storage unit, just collecting donations, putting them in our basement, getting a storage unit, going to 5 storage units, and then buying our space in Poland Village last year. This weekend will be 1 year since we grand opened. And since we've grand opened, we have helped about 175 families, equating to over 500 mothers and their children total. And we're in 7 counties in Northeast Ohio serving women, 2 in Western Pennsylvania. And it's just been a really neat thing to watch people come together for just a good, just to help empower women. And the stuff is easy. We've had generous donors, but what we found is that this concept of community, everyone's walked through hard times in life, right? It can be very, very lonely. And as a young single mother, or even like a not so young single mother, it's just a very lonely time. And so to provide that community has been huge. So we've grown fast. Our building's beautiful. It's in Poland Village. We were so blessed to be able to purchase that. And, just kind of like finding our stride now.
That's awesome. That's something about this community in the Youngstown area is unique.
So special.
In that sense, where once things get momentum and you start to get people together to a shared mission, we've started to accomplish some really neat things around here. Mm-hmm. And to be able, we had a good friend of mine on the pod some time ago, and he was talking about the resources available to children with autism, and that being something very unique in our community, of something that we have that a lot of other places have. And things like this can eventually become something that a community is known for, is that, hey, we are here to take care of these families, and we're here to take care of single moms, and we're here to take care of entrepreneurs and have the right infrastructure and support in place for people to come here and select this as the place that they ultimately come and raise their family. So you talk about empowering women, and when Will and I were talking about bringing the two of you on, it made so much sense because you're both doing something similar but different in your respective areas. Both of you come from a banking background, and you're in a very kind of male-dominated environment, and there's undoubtedly something at our firm that we've seen as we've grown our accounting practice, is that there isn't enough infrastructure and support in place to specifically grow a community of empowering female founders, your organization, Candace, and young professionals, and forming that community of people to support one another and give people the mentorship and guidance. So, Candace, you and I met through a mutual friend in the banking industry, and came together and are working on a few other initiatives. And when you started talking about this female founded concept in your group where you guys go around and check out different restaurants together and do all these different things, there's always something new that I learn about in terms of what you're doing and trying to give back to the community as well. So I want to talk a little bit about female founded and
Sure.
why did you feel that this was something that was important? Where are you at in this organization? And then we'll talk a little bit about, why the two of you have come together today.
Yeah. So Female Founded came about. I'm a co-founder. So my other co-founder, Carson Burke, she also has a women's group. We were connected. She couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but we were connected through a mutual connection who said, hey, listen, the two of you got to meet each other. You're both doing like something really cool with women. Would love to introduce you. So Carson and I connected, and we just share a passion, right? For her background is very entrepreneurial, right? Where I don't know much outside of, the banking world. I started my career young in banking, and that's what I've been doing ever since. But I knew that I certainly had a passion for connecting women, and not. The other thing was I didn't want any woman to feel alone. I think that when you're so embedded in your career, right? And we talk about this often. You sometimes lose sight of who you are as an individual, right? Life becomes so much about work. And then after you have or create a family yourself and you have kids, then it's about work and family, because everything you do then becomes about your family. And I think that sometimes we get, we get lost in that. And I would say one thing that I know I personally wanted was to, find my identity outside of that. Walking into conversations with different types of women or even men, right? It was super comfortable for me to have a conversation about work, anything work related, right? I could do it with a smile on my face. I loved it. You could see the passion come out. And then you ask me about my children or my husband, and I light up, right? But outside of that, connecting with individuals who might not be at that same place, right? Whether it was trying to find a way to mentor someone younger, right? A younger me at one point in my life, or someone who might not have those things. I found myself often, feeling awkward. What do I talk about? And then I think that's really when I started to figure out, like, geez, like, I am missing something. I found so much fulfillment in all these things that I've done. I'm missing something about, outside of my work and my family. What can I do? And I would say connecting with Carson was one of the best things. She's a younger version of me. And it's great to see what she's done with her women's group. So we have two separate women's groups. And what came out of that was Female Founded. So, we both had very similar missions and just empowering different women to connect with one another, right? To support one another. And out of that came, a vision to bring all of these women and all these different groups together. So again, not trying to add anything else to this community or another organization that does the same thing at all. In fact, we just want to be like a resource for women. We want to be able to, if we see a single mom come our way, right? That she's looking to invest in herself. She's looking to do something else, but she doesn't really know how to do that. Connecting her to if it's not one of our groups, right, connecting it with another women's group that's out there, another individual that can help guide her down that path. And, I'd say that Carson and I very much shared that same passion. We said, you know what, we don't really know where the future of female founded is going to go. We know that, we have this great, amazing online platform. We want to see it grow and we want to see it build, but we're going to take baby steps and we're going to be patient with it. We're going to do it right. But we would love to do, something for charity. How do we get all of these women in the same room and find a way to give back to our community? And that is how the fashion show was born.
And that's kind of how we got the two of you together here today is, Candace and I are part of a CEO group through the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. And she was talking about it in our group and tried to make some connections to some friends in the industry to help support it. And I think that this is something that people are going to love. So let's talk a little bit about the fashion show. So this is Female Founded's event, and Clothed in Strength is the financial beneficiary of the event. Can you tell me where it's at, what it's all about, what we're going to be doing at the fashion show? Are we going to put Billy in something nice?
I don't know if they have anything husky for me.
A boy's husky?
Great. Well, you always have a place. But yeah, so the fashion show is going to be it's going to be an afternoon event on Sunday, November 2nd, from 11:30 to 3:30, 4 o'clock. We're having it at Penguin City. And again, so Heather is our keynote speaker. We do have another surprise speaker that will be announced here shortly that we're looking forward to. But we are having a full-blown fashion show. Outside of the charitable aspect of it, we also wanted to tie in our support back to the community. So we've got about 45 confirmed vendors.
Wow. Nice.
Yes, we're turning it into a full-blown shopping spree for anyone in attendance. All local small businesses. We want to be able to support them also. So, it's going to be a great day full of a lot of fun. I think empowerment for everybody. Right?
Is this the inaugural, the first one?
It is it is our very first fashion show that we're having. We've had so many amazing people come forward wanting to help us. A lot of people who have background with like New York Fashion Week. We have a DJ who's been doing these for 20, 30 years. So it is going to be an actual show.
Yeah. That's cool.
And then the back of Penguin City is going to be opened up for our vendors. So
Okay.
So yeah, we're very grateful for Penguin City for allowing us the opportunity to be there. And we're very much looking forward to supporting a great cause.
That's awesome. Well, shout out to Aspasia and Rich. They're always doing some cool stuff down in Penguin City.
It's a great space too. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always a good time.
For those of you that might catch this out of town and have not been back to Youngstown for a while, Penguin City did a substantial renovation of an old Youngstown industrial property, and our good friend Pat McGlone painted the outside. It's beautiful. The inside is just such a cool space that could be used for so many different things. So we're excited about the event. I know that we will be there. We'll have a contingency of folks that are there for that. But I want to talk about something that I think really kind of applies to both of you. I'm a big proponent of mentoring, and it's something that has been very impactful in my life. I had someone that mentored me early on in my career, and I've had different kind of eras of mentors, to quote Billy's favorite, Taylor Swift. And one thing that I realized as we were going was at our firm, we had received a lot of different cultural recognitions. And in 2021, we were voted as the best accounting firm in the country for women. And one of the things I realized quickly through that process was there was a lot of self-doubt when we received that recognition. I'm like, how, why, what are we doing differently? What are we doing better? And one of the things that I realized that we had the foundations of was having mentoring available for those young professionals and those young women that were starting their careers, because it took one of those conversations for me to kind of open my eyes up about, why this is so important. And I was having a conversation with one of our rock stars at the firm. She's been by my side for many years. She's really growing and running a substantial part of our business. And I thought about a lot of the ways that, I established relationships with clients. We'd go out golfing, or we'd take them out to dinner, or we'd take them to a baseball game, or we'd do, whatever it was to kind of form those kind of relationships. And there was never a question about, okay, I'm asking so-and-so to go grab a beer with me. We're going to grab a beer and we're talking about business, right? But then when it came time for me to look to that young professional and say, hey, these are the things that I did, right? These are the things that I did to go build my kind of network of people. And as I'm saying it to her, and as we're having the conversations about it, I'm realizing that her networking is going to look different than mine, right? She's an outstanding professional. She's great at her job, but she's also a very attractive young woman. And looks younger than she is. And I always had that challenge of kind of like, when I was starting up, I was too young for people to take me seriously. And then I was to the point where I started to lose my hair and get a few gray hairs. It was like, oh, well, he's old enough.
There's something about that perception of being young that it's hard. And it's really difficult.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the thing that I realized was that the challenge that I wasn't equipped with to help her was dealing with that conversation of, you have a husband at home, you have children at home, you're faithful to your husband, you don't want anything to ever be misconstrued as something that it is not. And yet, you're in the professional environment and being asked to go entertain and go spend time with these people. And it's a very different line than I dealt with as a male in the professional services industry. And realized quickly that I wasn't equipped to help her because my experience was different than her experience, and I needed to find the appropriate resources. And that's when we started providing coaches. Male and female coaches to our staff members to help them deal with these kinds of things. But I see that as something that's just hugely important in the professional community, is not just mentoring everyone, but having appropriate mentors to partner with the right people to teach them through these kinds of nuances and how do you deal with that. So I'd just be curious, and especially both of you being in the banking industry, and Heather, you spent 13 or so years in the banking industry. Candace, you've spent many years in the banking industry. And this isn't an uncommon thing, right? Is that there is an expectation of relationships, and you've got a fine line to kind of, to cross there. So what are the things that you would say to those young female professionals when they're dealing with these challenges, and how to navigate that balance of, I don't want there to be any perception of impropriety or anything close to that, but at the same time, I also don't want to be viewed negatively in my professional career as those are the societal norms of the things that you're supposed to be doing as you're getting started. So, what would you say about the challenges that you guys have seen and the things that you've dealt with through that process? What would you say to your daughter who's 24 years old and now working, or that next generation of people that are coming out of college and getting into this? Can you share any advice?
It's so crazy whenever you say going for beers and baseball games, and because I don't even know that I realized how much we did that right early on. You did what you saw your leaders do. Most of our leadership were men, and so I never really gave thought to that until I was further along in my career. And I think whenever you're doing, and those things aren't inherently bad, right? But I think that within me personally, I would consistently feel this conflict of, I have children to get home to, and I need to make dinner, and I'm a wife, and all of these things. And it was finding, how can I network in a way where I feel like I'm being true to myself? And the biggest part of that for me was remembering and discovering discovering who I was. And there's a whole story to that, but 2014, I hit this point in my life where literally someone looked at me in the eyes and they said, "What do you like to do?" And I was like, I don't even know what it was, but it was like this slap me in the face moment where I looked at them and I like started to cry because I was like, I don't know. I was like, I like to cook for my family and I have children and I'm a banker and I go to football games with my husband, which I do love. You know, we love to go to sporting events. It's not that, but it's like if there was anything that was about me, I had no idea. And it really took me on this many years of journey to figure out who I was. And I had gone straight from, you know, a domestic violence relationship to being a single mother to meeting my husband. We moved very fast. And then we had another daughter. I had never, ever taken time to heal. And I had never taken time to figure out who Heather was. And once I did, and that took time, it started to change how I did network at work because I wasn't being true to myself and being in some of these environments. I'm a very connective person. I like personal. I don't really like to talk surface level or about trying to find things to talk about. I love deep, meaningful relationships and really getting to know people, which is why I loved helping my clients and helping other people. But I needed to figure out who I was. And for me, that looked different as my career, you know, and I didn't really discover that till the tail end of my career. And I feel like I've learned so much more because I've learned who I am, even post leaving the bank more. That I've been able to step into situations confidently. I love how you said, like, you know, you could rock any conversation. I used to say I was like the most insecure, confident woman you would have ever met. Like I could talk, right? I could talk to anyone. Inside, I'm like screaming, like, you know, it's just like this it doesn't feel authentic and it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel real. So for me personally, it was really, being who I am all the time and letting that mirror inside and outside of the work environment and adjusting those networking opportunities to reflect that.
Well, that's when the real relationships happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have meaningful, deep, trusting relationships with people unless you're being real with them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was what really opened my eyes. Was it was very natural and easy for me to have those relationships. Not that I wasn't worried about, you know, getting home to my wife and my children, but, you know, I am wired to provide, right? And that is my primary focus. And I don't have any paternal instincts that are challenging that on a regular basis, right? But undoubtedly that's something that, you know, trust and relationships are so important in what we all do collectively, whether it's when you are in the banking industry, when you're in the financial institution industry. If you can't form those real, meaningful, deep relationships, then the interactions that you have with clients are always going to be kind of superficial to some degree, right? And you're never really going to be able to do great things because you can't truly be honest and radically candor, as Adam says, with one another.
It's exhausting too. If you're fighting that person all day long, being someone who you're not, you go home, you just want to lay down. I mean, you got kids to take care of, you have things that you have to do. It's painful and not to be who you are.
It's like you're giving your family what's left, right? And I think that was the biggest thing was just, and I never felt like I was fake, but it just never felt, I just didn't feel like I was truly being myself and adjusting how I connected with people, where we connected, realizing where there's benefit coming from certain networking environments versus more intimate, you know, sidebars. That it changed it all for me whenever I stepped into that. So,
and Candace, I mean, do you see that as something that comes up often in your conversations when you're getting together with, you know, these women that are leaders or business owners or community leaders or whatever, finding that balance is never easy for anybody.
It is very challenging, especially when you are in an environment, right, or in a position to where you want to do well, right, and sometimes doing well means meeting goals, right, that are set of you, or you know, trying to do what it takes to get to the next step in your career. But you know, again, I think there's a big difference between people pleasing, right? Yeah. And I think that that's a conversation that I have a lot because I I think I still struggle sometimes with even myself with the people pleasing, but I've matured with how I deal with it. Yeah. Right. And knowing and understanding that, like you said, being authentic to who you are, right. That you can still do what you do well. Right. And it might not lead to something right away, but if you ask for a seat at the table, you'd be really surprised how many people will open doors to let you in. So maintaining that like professional conversation, right? If for any reason, like something's, you are put in an awkward position, right? Always never feeling bad for just finding a way to navigate that conversation back around to something professional,
right.
You know? Or I think as a female, right? I think one of the things we talk a lot about is if you are uncomfortable, or if you feel that you're going to be put in an uncomfortable position, you have to go to that event, or you have to take that person to dinner, or you feel any type of way about it, making sure that you don't do it alone.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I think that kind of goes back to why Female Founded was created. It started with, you know, my women's group before Female Founded started as me wanting to just kind of have a breather after work, right? But I didn't want to go and have an opportunity to go to a nice restaurant, have a martini if I wanted to with an appetizer, not doing it alone, right? Having somebody to go with me. And it started as, you know, me and one of my female counterparts doing that on our own, and it felt safe. You know, we could do that. We can have a conversation without having to worry about anything, and then we could leave. But believe it or not, through that we met a ton of other women.
Yep.
So
how many are you up to?
A lot of other women that are just like us, that, you know, that do the same exact thing. And so yeah, I again, just going back to that, it's just, you know, not letting those pressures of feeling a certain way take over who you are. Because that's when you really lose yourself.
Yeah. And I know that both of you are remarkably competitive human beings. And Candace, we've talked a little bit about that. You know, Heather, I'm maybe inferring your competitiveness from your prior Mrs. Ohio and all the competitions that you were a part of. But I have a sneaky suspicion that the two of you like to win. Your definition of winning can be different. That's subjective. But I see that as a challenge, is like, how do we win this game? We see how our counterparts and the people that have previously won this game, who were males, especially in the financial community, you know, how can we still win this game but play a little bit different, right? So that we can be our authentic, real selves and form those real relationships. So I love the mentoring component of both of what you guys are doing here, because I know how huge that is. I mean, because one of the things you realize pretty quickly as an adult is like, we're just figuring our shit out. You know what I mean? Nobody really knows what they're doing, right? No one truly knows to the extent that you all maybe think that they know. We're all human. We're all just figuring it out. And sometimes it's nice to be a part of a group of people that you can be honest about that with,
right.
And just figure it out together, and not feel like you have to come in and be on and know and always have the right answers for people. So,
I mean, you both said it too at some point, where it's like, well, what would my 22-year-old self want to know or need to know, or how to talk to somebody, who to talk to, just having someone that's there for you, being able to give back on both sides. We feel the same way on the whole mentorship program, and that's why it's so important. Not everybody has that built in with a mom, a dad that's still around, and to be able to do something like that is very special.
So kind of coming back to the theme of our podcast, right? So the podcast is called Failing Forward. You know, we believe that those setbacks ultimately become the foundation of that, you know, launch pad for what we're doing next and what we build upon. Can each of you share, you know, some kind of failure that you went through in your either collegiate career, your academic career, your professional career that have shaped who you are and why you're doing what you're doing today?
I can't, of course, I've had lots of failures, trust me. And each one of them has really grown me into who I am today and the mission that I set out to accomplish, not only at work, but in my personal life and with other people that I interact with on a daily basis. But, I'd say one thing, one failure I would have to admit that has been, and still is a challenge from time to time, is that I'm a processor. So I process everything. And often it takes me a minute to think about like a situation before I respond. But I would say like internally, right? A failure that I've really learned from and that I'm continuing to grow from is avoidance of uncomfortable. The avoidance of the uncomfortable, right? Or just not confronting an issue, right? Even when it comes to being in an office, right? If you feel if you feel a certain way about something or someone, or it's usually like personal insecurities, right? So learning how to overcome those when we're in rooms, right, of people that we don't know, instead of finding time to grab your drink and stand alone, or maybe stand with people that you know. I'd say one of my biggest failures was falling into that, for the longest time. I feel like that actually set me back. It became a comfort zone, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Of not really learning more about someone else, right? Because I never made the effort to do that, or never confronting, an issue at hand by just asking about it, or, avoiding something that was uncomfortable, right? I think that I've had several failures in those circumstances that I've learned from, and that I've had time to process, right?
Yep.
That's certainly, I think that's the one thing that every day I try to do differently, right?
Yep.
Is learning how to address those things. So even, again, like if it comes down to, not everybody is, you can care for and love everyone, right? But not everyone's going to love you back. But that doesn't mean you don't still love them. Yep. It's finding a way to still open the doors to those conversations for other people that aren't like you,
Yep.
right? And I think I've really learned to get, from those past failures of failing to do those things, not getting to know certain people, or not being open, or avoiding uncomfortable circumstances. I've learned from those. And have done my best to try to turn them around.
That's something I wish that earlier on in my career, earlier on in just professional world period, is having resources for people to understand what emotional intelligence means. Because there's real world intelligence, and then there's emotional intelligence. And the emotional intelligence, at least from my perspective, is learning how to not react emotionally to things, and how to be able to face those conversations head on and have a real conversation about it. And, I know that I've gone through a variety of those iterations with different partners and different customers and different vendors, where if I knew earlier that and truly respected and appreciated that everybody's dealing with their own stuff.
Yep.
And so sometimes people react in a way that is hard to understand. right? You're going through a difficult problem with a client or a customer or someone you're serving in the community, and you've done something for them and they react in a certain way to you. And it has nothing to do with what you did. It has nothing to do with what you said. But something in that circumstance triggered an emotional reaction from that person. And they're ultimately, to your point, projecting their own insecurities onto you by the way that they're responding to you. So then what happens is you find those people pretty quickly. You identify them pretty quickly and you see them. And then what happens is you ultimately choose not to interact with them anymore because they can't separate the two and they only react emotionally. And that's kind of like the culture of our overall work environment for many years up until I think now, over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, it's started to change a little bit where that emotional unintelligent reaction of like dictatorship leadership and just this is how I said to do it, don't ask any questions, just smile and nod your head and move on. But how do you have that awkward confrontational conversation without insulting someone and just I've gone as far as to call someone out, call people out and say, don't project your insecurities on me. We're just trying to solve this problem together. And it might be a difficult problem that, just triggers a variety of other things, but it's hard to have those conversations. I know I still struggle with that from time to time.
We all do. And it's really tough. I still try to find ways around it, but I think, again, there's got to be a resolution at the end of the table. And I think, I look at it like I've got to be, if I've got to be the one that initiates that conversation, whether it's uncomfortable or whether that group is uncomfortable for me to walk up to, or I'm nervous about that person, or I don't like that conflict that just happened, right? I can't stand confrontation. I never liked it. But I think if we completely avoid it, right? That it doesn't really get us anywhere. But
no,
this vicious cycle, and then it eats you alive.
Yep.
And then every time you're in that same room, you feel it, and it's just, one thing that we have very little of on this earth is time, and they're just really, none of us should spend time focusing on those things. It's just not worth it. We're not going to get anywhere as individuals. We're not going to get anywhere as a community if we do that. So I think we're all still learning how to put that behind us. But I'd say that, I've learned from plenty of failures that have circumvented around that, how to do my best to make those situations better.
I mean, honestly, I feel like I've learned the most about my lack of emotional intelligence over the early years of my career by having conversations with my wife. Because what I do professionally is not something that she is familiar with at all. When I come home and talk about anything related to what I'm doing on a regular basis, she's like, what are you talking to me about? It's nerd stuff. It's too geeky. It's this, that, or the other. But I've realized, in a lot of those conversations with her is that it's given me a different perspective because she is my partner. She is the one person outside of any other business partners I have or any other commitments I have. She's it. She is number one in my life, and she's the person that I need to be held accountable to on a regular basis. So if I'm communicating to her and it's not landing, then it's always been a good indication to me of my lack of emotional intelligence that I need to get better at in my communication with other people, because I've been with my wife for over 20 years. And if it's not landing there, then it sure as hell isn't going to land anywhere else. So one of the questions that I do like to ask is, I feel that I've learned a lot about myself as a husband and as a father that have made me better as an entrepreneur and as a leader in our community. Is there anything, Heather, that you've learned along the way as a wife, as a mother, as a friend that has then contributed to changing how you've developed professionally, or vice versa?
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of to piggyback on what I said earlier, at least just for me personally in my journey, has been really stepping into like who I am, whose I am, and really staying focused on, like, once I knew myself, once I went through counseling, which I didn't do until 2020. I mean, I can remember this, I went to go meet with a counselor for the first time, and she said, have you ever dealt with, basically this trauma that you walked through? And I said, no, you're just doing life, right? But I know that once I was able to really learn myself and learn how to communicate, with my husband, it was amazing, because then our whole marriage shifted. We learned how to talk to each other instead of instead of at each other, and just knowing. It took us a while to figure out, he responds this way because, right, we're a product of our environment, and we all have things we've dealt with. My husband and I were just talking about this earlier today. And then, there are ways that things I've been through, and it's forming the way that we talk to each other. But all that to say, I feel like once we just broke through that, I learned a lot about myself and how to communicate and how to ask for what I need, not just in my marriage, not just with my children, but when serving others and when in the professional environment, because I've shoved it down for a lot of years, and it, just kind of taking stuff and just being what other people wanted me to be, so you can meet numbers, or so that you could kind of get ahead and be successful. And it's like, okay, no, these have to align for me. I need to align with who I truly am, staying true to what I believe. And learning to communicate that. And sometimes, I don't know, it's funny because I'm from the South, so it's like literal, oh, bless your heart, everything gets kind of swept under the rug. Yeah.
You say, oh, bless your heart. We know what that means.
You know what that means. And so my family can say now that I can be I'm a little more direct, right? And I think I love this area for that reason. I didn't like it for that reason at first. And then I've learned, I love people who just are who they say that they are. You don't ever have to worry about where you stand with them. They're the same behind closed doors as they are in front of you. And that's who I strive to be. And that, I think, by just developing that and figuring that out myself in the communication part, it's been able to help me in every aspect of my life. It could be having conversations with donors. It could be having conversations with women that come through our doors. I'm very open about my story. So I love when they walk in the door, and these single mothers who so many have no one. I mean, I always had a great family I could have gone home to, but so many of the women that we serve don't have anyone. And I think that, sometimes people just need someone to believe in them until they're able to believe in themselves. And so being able to talk with them about it whenever they walk in and say, Heather, I read your story, so I know you understand where I'm coming from. I think it's so easy sometimes to see someone at a certain part of life, when they're on the other side maybe, but what got them there and what's that journey? And it's just something, Candace and I have talked about this, you'll never forget. I'll never forget where I came from. I mean, balancing a checkbook down to a penny, or making sure that everything was paid, or hugging my daughter and crying because it's just so hard. You'll never forget that. And so then you can just serve so well now. So,
I mean, I think about everything that you've said as a parent, and I have all these parallels as a parent and as someone who is responsible for others in our business. And I think about, how can I help my children and or the next generation of people coming up in our business to avoid the stress, the pain, the difficult things that we went through, right? As a parent, that's your job, right? Is to create something better for your children than what you had. Regardless of what you had was good, bad, or indifferent, we feel an inherent desire and or responsibility to create something better for them, right? So the question then begs, how do we accomplish that, right? How do we accomplish creating this roadmap, or creating this radical candor or honesty, or encouraging communication with this next generation of professionals to say, I want to help you through this process, and I want to help you learn the things so that you don't have to touch the hot stove yourself, right? Is there, you talk about, counseling ultimately was a big help to you in finding out who you are and getting to your own authentic self, so that you can be, your own authentic self with other people and form more deep, meaningful relationships. So, Candace, when we talk about your community of founders and community of female leaders, how do you encourage and or help and or develop that next generation of people that are still figuring that out, right? Is there something that you feel is important, and or if you had someone in your corner when you were 22 years old figuring a lot of this stuff out, I mean, do we just figure this out as we get older and wiser, or is there a way that we can encourage and help people to figure this out earlier in their careers?
Yeah, no, I think, so I think the conversation it looks different depending on who you're talking to. You know, if you're talking to somebody that has been through a lot, you know, I think of one saying that comes back to me time and time again, and I say it often, is that we all know that we all hear, you know, hurt people, but hurt people do hurt people, but healed people also help people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, right? Is those of us that have found some healing in our lives one way or another, you know, we should take that on to be able to help somebody else who can really be hurting, right? And stop the cycle. Mm-hmm. The cycle can be stopped, and it has to start with someone. Who are you waiting on, mm-hmm. right? Why not let it start with you?
Right.
And then I know one thing that really helped me was realizing that it wasn't about me. I think when you can actually realize that none of it is about you, right? This passion that you have, right? It's there for a reason, right? The things that you've been through, right, have all developed you in some way, somehow. Whether you look at it like it's not about me, meaning, you know, I do this for my children, or I do this for my husband, or you can even turn it to, it's not about me, when, you know, something could be brought on you that isn't your problem, right? But you can also look at it as it's not about me when you are reaching out to help another organization, right? None of it, the attention, all of it, right, doesn't have to, it's really not about me. Why did we do this? Why did we start this? Why are we continuing to do this? It's because it's not about me. And I think that that's what makes things like doing this, which is even uncomfortable for me, right, makes me realize that, coming here today, I think that was one of the first things I said to myself, is that, you know, I might not like being put in this environment. I don't know what the heck's going to be asked of me. I'm a little nervous, but at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about all the women out there that are like me, all the other people out there that are like me, right? Maybe the ones that even are, right? Helping them realize that at the end of the day, there's we all have we all want to believe that we have this purpose. Well, why don't you make what you do every day purposeful, mm-hmm. right? Instead of trying to seek and find that purpose.
I think that is a very profound statement when it comes to mentoring people, is helping them to understand that it is not about you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is so, from so many different angles, the more that I think about it, how relevant that is to tell someone earlier in their career, as they're in high school, as they're in college, and getting them to understand that this isn't about you. Mm-hmm. And the quality of your life is going to be way better the minute that you can really lean into and appreciate mm-hmm. that this isn't about you. To your point about, even the negative side of things, that's not about you either. Right. The positive things, that's not about you either. When you can find something that you're truly passionate about and support and make a difference in the world, that's what this is all about. That's what we should all strive to achieve. But yet we're kind of forced into this mentality of survivalism, and we're forced into this mentality of capitalism and competitiveness, and it's me versus the world. And I think that that's something that I'm very proud to see happening in our community, is that there's less of that. There used to be these like fiefdoms, mm-hmm. Where it was, Youngstown versus Warren, or there's a very real wall in the whole Canton versus Massillon thing too. But like the more that we realize that we can do so much more together than we can apart,
That's right.
that's when things change. And I mean, I think about that now as how do I ingrain that in my kids, and how do I have those conversations with my children about, hey, I know you're upset, and I know this didn't pan out the way that you wanted it to, but this ultimately isn't about you. This is, you're going to learn from this. This is what's going to make you better. This is how this is going to make you a better human being. This is what you can pay forward. So I think that is a really, really strong fundamental point that we should be communicating to, those that are getting started in their career, or quite frankly, those that are still lost, right? Because there's so many people, and I wake up every morning and I'm grateful for the fact that I love what I do. I love what I get to do. I love the people that I get to do it with, the conversations that I get to have, and I'm thankful for that. But I know that there is the vast majority of the population are just generally unhappy for whatever reason. They don't enjoy their job. They don't enjoy where they're at in the world. And a lot of that kind of is driven by social media, right? Is that, when the social media algorithms that have kind of infected our communities and our youth and our people now are changing the way that we view the world. And it's forcing us out of this mentality of being together and forcing us in this mentality of, well, this person has this, and this person went on this trip, and this person drives this car. And at the end of the day, none of that crap matters. But if we are empowering people to say it's not about you, stop comparing yourself, because comparison is ultimately the thief of joy, then you're going to live a better life. So one of the things we talked about a little bit as we were kind of getting rolling here was social media. And we have kids at different ages of experience in social media, and mine are not there yet. Thank God. And I have,
it's a blessing.
I have two boys that, we're not really talking about social media right now. Even like YouTube, I don't like them watching YouTube because it just goes down these crazy rabbit holes. Then all of a sudden they started off watching something like sweet and innocent, and they're like building Legos. And then next, like someone shooting someone with a bow and arrow. I'm like, how did we get here?
Sneaky,
right?
Sneaky world out there. Yeah.
So I know I've talked about this before as like harnessing the power of the algorithm, and in liking the things that you should be liking and participating in the things you should be participating, because you cultivate your own social media feed. If you like the bad stuff, if you like the things that are comparing to other people, that's all you're going to get more of. You're going to only see Alex Hormozy and his McLaren, or, this, that, or the other influencer and their private jet and blah, 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 blah. But you don't see the rest of it. You don't see the rest of their life, right? So I know, Heather, you've got a 24-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah, almost 14, yep.
And Candace?
I've got 3 daughters.
3 daughters. At what age range?
So 16, 13, and soon to be 12.
Oh, my God.
It's a lot.
Well, you want to step in and help
A lot
with
of my poor husband.
I hear that and I'm like, oh God. I mean, these are conversations that I was not prepared to be a father, period. But like being a father and having to raise daughters seems like a different challenge that I don't know that I was prepared for a variety of reasons. But, and I talk about and I think about social media, the impact of the girls, right? And this whole mentality that gets forced upon them because of social media. What do you do with your kids when it comes to social media? When the girls come to you and say, hey, everybody else has an Instagram and everybody else has a Snapchat and everybody else has a TikTok, and, I know that you don't want me to do it, but I want to do it, right? And you want to raise your daughters to be strong, independent women, but at the same time, you're here to be the guardrails, right? So, what are some of the conversations that you've had? Heather, we'll start with you about social media in your household with your girls.
Yeah, I love how you use the word guardrails, because in our house, that's exactly what we believe that we are to be, right? And in a world where we're the most connected than we've ever been, we see all the studies that come out around how genuinely lonely people are. And so that's what I love between either of our missions that we serve. You still find that no matter what phase of life you're in, a lot of people are just lonely, but there's a lot of activity happening, scrolling and looking and comparing. And so it leaves us a lot of times feeling like we're not good enough, we don't have enough, we need more.
A lot of people don't share their stories like you two are doing that.
Right.
And that's what I take away from this, is that ability. You do feel alone when nobody else is talking about the, things that you went through in your life. And sometimes they're great. Sometimes they're not so great. But having somebody that's out there talking about what you two are talking about makes people feel less lonely. Like they're not doing it alone. Right.
And that's what people like. No one wants to feel alone. Like, I think the best thing is whenever you look at someone and you tell your story and they're like, you too? Mm-hmm. Like, they had no idea that was a part of your story. And so then it forms this bond and this relationship. And with us personally, social media, a 24-year-old, we didn't have TikTok yet. Thankfully, we weren't dealing with any of that. But it was a hard no for our family. I feel like as adults, it can be something that we don't manage well. And there's a lot of ugliness. There's a lot of good that could come from social media. Clothed in Strength, I wholeheartedly believe, has spread and grown so greatly, partly because of a large part of social media. But when it comes to our youth, it's those guardrails. It's protecting you, knowing that we know as adults what it's used for at times, and the causes that the end results of that. And you're still so formidable. I mean, you think you might know, right? And so we did give our daughter social media her senior year. Everyone else had it. She was not happy, but she did have it. And now she's 24, and I think she never even really got into big social media use. But she's 24 and she doesn't have it. And she has come back to her own, obviously, her own doing. But she's come back and thanked us since and said that, I'm thankful. I didn't like it at the time, but I am glad that I didn't become dependent on it, and it didn't become something that became a habit for me. And, so she doesn't have it. Our little one, thankfully, she hasn't asked, and we've talked about it, and we've had the YouTube conversations like you're saying, because the internet and YouTube right? I said we told our daughter months ago, you could be typing in something very innocent, and it doesn't mean that that's going to come up innocent, right? Yeah. And so we have a hard, no searching the internet with her, and just putting the parental controls on there so that she, out of curiosity, isn't even, tempted to go down or finding things that can't be taken back, once you see an image or once you hear something or read something. And so that's just personally in our family what we've stuck to. But
yeah, I would say this might be one of those failures that I think I've learned from, and I think, we moved here in December of 22. So prior to that, my two youngest were too young. They weren't really into social media. My oldest, I think, she wasn't either. She would watch a couple of videos, but we monitored them. And then I think when we moved here and they started, my girls started having some, complications with fitting in or trying to fit in, right? I think as mom and even my husband, our natural instinct was to give in, mm-hmm. And I think we learned from that. It's so hard when, you've got, so and so does it, and I think you just want your kids to be happy, and you know how you feel about it, and then you tell yourself, I'm going to monitor it. And then before you know it, you forget to check up on it. And then when you forget to check up on it, then there are sometimes things come around and they bite you in the butt. And I have a couple of those stories, and I can't say that I'm proud of them. My husband would say the same thing. I think for us, and this is the honest answer, is keeping our family ingrained in faith, mm-hmm. and talking about it very openly, and trying to teach our daughters through that,
It's not a one size fits all by any means.
Right.
Every family is a little bit different. There's a lot of science behind, a lot of people researching these answers, and you get varying opinions, different answers on that level too. But yeah, it's not just, hey, this is what's best for everybody. You really have to take into consideration your family and your situation.
You do. And it takes up so much time. I mean, before you know it, like even us, like we're doom scrolling, and like what
could
started
you have done
as
otherwise?
I was doing it
Right?
for 5 or 10 minutes turns into 30 minutes, and it's like holy crap! Like it just took me away from having a really great conversation with somebody that was with me, or and again, I think it kind of just boils back down to that, is that our communication. Right, our communication happens when we give each other time, and when we spend time together, whether it's in a professional environment or at home or with friends, however you do it. Being on social media all day, right? If you don't really have a cause, it's depressing. I mean, even no one would know my story. No one would probably know Heather's story. We don't post that stuff on social media. We post the things that we're proud of. And that's what everyone else does, Yeah,
and I mean, I think that when we talk about being guardrails to our children or our team members, what we can't avoid is the fact that this isn't going anywhere, right? It doesn't mean that once your daughter is 24 years old and she's living out on her own, that she's not still going to have to deal with this and still going to have to think about, should I be participating in this or not? Or what's the value from it or not? One of the conversations we have with our people, really typically early on, is we go through this exercise when people are studying for the CPA exam, because the CPA exam is a very difficult test to pass. There's like 10% pass rate on the first try. And I always have the conversation with people and they say, well, I don't have enough time. And I said, I don't think I agree with that, because I've seen some really impressive people pass the CPA exam. One of my close friends that I went to college with, Angela Dusky, who is an amazingly successful person in this community and works with Southwoods, and she got her CPA exam with 2 little kids at home. And she got through it. She passed it on the first time, and she was up at 4:00 in the morning studying. And I mean, it was a remarkable feat of tenacity to accomplish this. But what I realized through watching her go through that process at that time was, we all make that excuse to say we don't have time, right? So what we ask people to do is sit down on Sundays and do an evaluation of where you spent your time over the course of the week, because to your point, time is the most valuable thing that we have, right? Time does not equal money. Time is greater than in value money, because you can make more money. You cannot make more time, right? So we talk about the idea of spending time like you spend money, and looking at it like a wallet, like a bank account, like you're balancing your checkbook, and you're thinking about, where do I spend that last penny? Well, think about it, where do I spend that last 10 minutes? And if you can put that perspective into people and say, open up your iPhone and look at once a week your summary of where you spent your time on your phone, right? And if it comes back and it says, well, you spent 8 hours on Snapchat over the course of the week, or you spent 8 hours on TikTok or Instagram or this, that, or the other, then think, what did you actually accomplish in those 8 hours? What did you get out of that, other than just mindlessly death scrolling through that, right? Or what could you have done with those 8 hours? And could you have spent those 8 hours volunteering in your community? Could you have spent those 8 hours getting the professional designation you wanted, or creating that side hustle ultimately that frees you from whatever sucky job that you're currently at that you don't love, right? So just kind of doing that inventory management of your time is something that I think is certainly important, and more people should be kind of paying closer attention to that.
We were just talking about this at the office. There's a tool now that will like physically lock your phone. So
I need that.
You like tap it on this thing, and a lot of times like when you go to bed, you like put it in a different room. You tap the phone, and it locks. I think it's just iPhone, so I don't know about it. Okay.
Yeah, Android guys. He's a green bubble.
Everyone always on me about that. But in order to unlock your phone again, you have to physically go tap it. So in the morning when you wake up, you're not going to just roll over and check your phone. it physically blocks you. So sometimes you have to trick yourself, or you have to use these tools to make sure that you aren't obsessively checking. Even, work emails sometimes for me. I'm like, I'm going to check this at midnight for what reason? Like, like, no, it's not, I'm not a brain surgeon or anything. No one's calling me for that, but it just becomes this habit. You talked about it earlier. Like, I'm working, we're doing these things. Make sure you take time for yourself. And I think there's little tips and tricks. We try to accumulate those things and share them with our team as much as possible, but it can be hard.
I feel like social media is the next generation's cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like, our generation had to deal with cigarettes and the addictiveness of nicotine, and how, there was all of this science to getting the right chemical, combination of things so that you want to go back and smoke cigarettes. But the same thing happens with social media, right? Is that it's like crack for your brain, right? It forces you to come back. It forces you to go down those rabbit holes. It forces you to keep scrolling. So I know that, like, someone that's, maybe 21, 22 years old right now that's sucked into that, 10 years down the road that they'll realize it. But the more that we could show them now versus getting 10 years and wasting all of that time, to your point,
That's right.
you can't get it back,
Yep.
right? Okay, so we'd like to wrap up with a bit of a rapid fire round here. So I'll hit you both with a few quick hitters. Best advice you've ever received?
I mean, I've had a lot of great mentors, but I would say mine is more of a quote. So I've always loved the quote, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain, and just take action. There are times when we talk about failures, I wish I would have just taken action instead of thinking about taking action, and then that causes you to stop before you even start. Right. And so, that's just a quote that that I've lived by.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's when the good stuff happens, is dancing in the storm.
Yep.
Right? Because otherwise it's that paralysis by analysis kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Candace, how about you? Best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I ever received was you can't take your wealth, you can't take your wisdom, you can't take your work. You can take none of that with you, right? So it's making the best of your time that you have here, and finding a way to make an impact, right? Making it count.
I love it. Billy, best advice you've received?
We talk a lot about believing in the next step. I mean, we go back to it's trash till it's cash, right? We really work hard to finalize a deal to get to that answer. I don't get my hopes up too much before it actually happens. So I just keep in the back of your mind until it's a done deal. It's not a deal at all.
And that's, I mean, as silly as it sounds, it's trash till it's cash. It becomes a pretty profound statement,
Trash till
because
it's cash.
we spend so much time getting our hopes up, right,
Yep.
in anticipation of something. And then when it doesn't happen, then you view it as a personal failure, or, you don't look at it from the right perspective. But just getting into that mentality where, like, let's just wait till it's done, and then we'll start planning the next step.
I'm an optimist. It's hard. I really believe in all the good things, and
Billy's got that golden
you're just
retriever
reading,
at
Yeah.
But it's helped me a lot to understand, not be as disappointed when you don't get what you expect out of a situation. Like, well, it wasn't supposed to be, right? And now we're moving here. So.
Yeah.
Biggest misconception people have about you or your work?
Well, wait, we didn't hear yours.
Oh, best advice. Okay, we'll go back. Best advice.
Skip
I'm
yourself.
sorry.
That's good. I like how you turn the tables here.
in anticipation here.
I mean, I feel like I got so many good ones from Harold early on in my career. I think that the best advice that he ever gave to me was just helping me see who I was. To your point, is that, when you're raised in certain circumstances and you have different things that you go through in your life, it's hard to understand who you are and the value that you can bring to the world, right? Until you find somebody that sees that in you when you don't. And it's not that I looked at myself and thought that I was a bad person or thought that I was not capable of certain things, but I had really serious limiting beliefs about who I could be and what I could become. And, I remember telling Harold that, if I could just get myself to a position where I can make $100,000 a year, That was all I wanted. That was all I was focused on, was just some weird arbitrary number. Like, why? What does that mean? It doesn't have any relevance to anything. It's not about being happy or having a good life at home or this, that, or the other. It was that. And, he said, why are you worried about that? Well, you're going to make money. You're going to do just fine. You have no idea how good you are. You have no idea the things that you can accomplish in this world, but just keep doing what you're great at and keep being you and live a real life and be authentic in what you're doing, and you're going to have a good life. Mm-hmm. And money will follow and success will follow in your own relative definition of that. But I think that was certainly, my man Harold has taught me a lot, but that was probably the best one.
Yeah.
And don't look back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't look back. Just keep going forward.
Yeah. Okay. What's your definition of success today versus 10 years ago?
Well, it's funny that you say that $100,000 thing, because I can remember at the bank, like I was like, I want to make 6 figures, And I remember when I hit that, and I hit 6 figures, and I literally looked around and I resigned from the bank a year later. And it was, I think then I really realized, like, what is it that defines success for me today? Now, as I stepped away to be with my family and grow with my husband, it's knowing that whenever I lay my head down at night, that I've taken action and that I've done everything that I can, because there's a lot of need in this world. It can be very, very heavy, a lot of the situations we're dealing with and a lot of the people that we're serving. But if I know that I have given all that I can with the gifts that God has given me, and lay my head down knowing that I just took action that day in some way, I feel like that day I can sleep good. Like, that was a successful day to me.
Yep. What do you think, Candace?
I mean, very similar. I think I remember in my, in my 20s, it was all what I thought success was getting to that next level in my career and making more money. And, I think success now really has nothing to do with that. For me now, it's teaching my children what's important, right? Not chasing that dollar. For me now, it is having those conversations and doing what I can to help someone else, right? And then I think the one thing, that gives me comfort when I lay my head down, and when I see success, it's not sweating the small stuff. Being able to lay my head down at night and know, like you, Heather, that I did everything I could in that day to make the best of it. So it's much different. None of it's tied to money.
Yep. And so, Billy, a different perspective here from you, being our resident dink of the office, dual income, no kids. We talk a lot about, ultimate success being, for me, if my kids are assholes or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if my kids turn out to be like genuinely good human beings, everything worked out the way that I would have hoped it to have. So, I know that you and Elena have a unique perspective on the world, and you travel and you eat good foods and you drink good wines, you have great conversations with great people, and you're very present human beings. For you and Elena, I mean, what does that success look like? Because you and I talk about this a lot. What does success look like today versus probably, let's take it even further back. Let's go 20 years ago, because Billy just had a big birthday. So, 20 years ago, you had this perception of what success was going to look like in your life. And what does that look like today?
It's the shift. It's the same thing you've all talked about. It's the shift from how can I get better myself to how can I help people? I don't know. I never really thought of that in an accounting sense before, but that's my number one job, is to help people fix their problems. And it's not just in a workplace environment. All the cool things we get to do with organizations like both of yours, like with the United Way, all of these things, it's really giving back. And it's also giving back to some of the younger staff. I remember being in public accounting at 22 years old. When I spent my first brief stint there for 3 years, and it was a very lonely place. And for me to be able to make somebody's life a little different in our office, and just let them realize like, hey, it is really good here. It's not like this everywhere else. And we get to help people every day. It's just a different perspective, even from a not just financial aspect, but just personal. Shifting the focus from myself and the I'm going to make six figures. So, someday. I think we've all had that conversation, being, from the Youngstown area. That's like, oh, you made it. That's not the case at all. It's really being able to focus, and Elena and I giving back, whether it's United Way or through her school, whatever that looks like. That's the main goal now. That age, when it creeps up on you, you don't realize it. You're like, okay, I know what can we do? How can we leave a lasting impression with just the two of us, and not anybody coming up behind us with children? It's us, right? It's our opportunity to do something special and give back. So many people have done that for us.
Yeah. Okay, so as we kind of button this thing up today, how can people find out more about Clothed in Strength? We'll start with you, Heather. Where can people go to find you, to see the events that you guys have going on, to pay attention, sign up for newsletters? Where can they go?
So clothedinstrength.org, or Clothed in Strength we're on Instagram and we're on Facebook. And so follow us and stay up to date. We send newsletters out. Look for our events and how you can plug in and serve. We could always use helping hands. So.
And you guys typically have at least 2 events a year. I know that we've got a purse bingo coming up, which I believe is sold out, correct?
It is sold out. This is our 3rd annual. So we sold out at 752 people this year. Wow. So it's pretty amazing.
That's a lot of purses.
Yes, that's a lot of purses. Yeah. But we do, and then February 7th, we're going to get ready to announce that, but we'll have our 3rd annual Soiree and Spirits, which is just a really fun jazz and drink night and good food at Drake's Landing. So we'll be rolling out information about that November 7th.
Awesome.
That's a great event. Really, I look forward to that one every year. Yeah.
Candace, how about you? Where can people find out how to join, how to be a part of the initiatives that you have going, whether it's female founded or going around and checking out the new restaurants that you guys do together? Where can they follow Candace?
So we've got a couple different groups. So on Facebook, Ladies Night Out, on Instagram, Let's Go Girls. But I would say Female Founded really supports all the women's groups. So as mentioned, Ladies Night Out, that's mine and another partner. That's our women's group. And then Carson has Let's Go Girls. But together we've all kind of formed Female Founded. Yep. So Female Founded, you can find us on Facebook under Female Founded, as well as purchase tickets or become a sponsor for our fashion show coming up. And then on Instagram, we're Female Founded Ohio.
Awesome. Well, I mean, what the two of you both are doing in our community is hugely needed. I love to be a part of it. I'm thankful to be in your orbit in some way, shape, or form when it comes time to these kinds of events and having our team participate. So thank you for doing everything that you're doing. Thank you for joining us today and
thank you for
talking
having
about
us.
your
Thank
mission.
you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast wouldn't be possible without Stonefruit Studios and Bentley Studios. If you'd like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and leave a review and/or comment. If you found this episode particularly helpful, we also encourage you to share it with a friend or on social media. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and failing forward.